systems go. Folks, welcome to San Francisco and VMworld 2014. Thank you for coming to this year's panel discussion on Oracle customer success stories. Specifically this year, we're going to be focusing on applications running on Oracle, running on vSphere, and all of the various different machinations with that particular premise. Is, of course, your standard disclaimer. I think you all know what all of that is and what all of that means. I'm Don Sullivan. I've been with VMware now for 4.5 years. I am a database specialist, solution architect. I've actually moved into product marketing at the moment, and so I'm actually a product line marketing manager. It's a little bit of a different role for me. I've been involved in these projects and these panels and these discussions and education for a very long time, but I haven't really, it was to a certain extent a hobby. Now it's really my real job. So I've got a lot of background in Oracle. I'm an Oracle certified master. I've spent 7 years as an instructor with Oracle, and again, been here for about 4.5 years now, pretty much doing all of the customer-facing engagements of all kinds with databases in general. So let me introduce our panelists. I'll let them wave. They're not necessarily in that order. John Tucker, First National Bank of Nebraska, is a lead database administrator. Been in IT for 22 years. I think we all have been around this block for quite a while here. Certainly all of my distinguished panelists. Oracle 7, was back to Oracle 7. That's when it really started working, right? And first used VMware in a DoD contract. He's married and he's got 4 teenagers, so I think he was glad to come out here and join us for this particular session. Mike Peters of Conagra Foods, lead system administrator, lead systems and network administrator of Conagra Foods. Been 16 years. You can tell a pattern here. There's emerging. Engineered Conagra's internal cloud, utilizing VMware and Cisco. Mike and I have been working together for quite a long time on some extremely impressive systems that I think you will understand the impact of here in the next 45 minutes. Chris Cook from CITA. Senior Database Manager. Chris and I have met a number of times. This is the first time he's been on one of these panels. Currently, he's a Senior Database Manager of Services for CITA. And he's a president of the Oracle, or the Georgia Oracle User Group out of Atlanta, right, Chris? Yep. And Dan Young. Dan Young certainly fills the role of the usual suspects here. Dan has been around for quite a long time with virtualizing Oracle, or virtualizing infrastructure for Oracle at Indiana University. Been extremely successful, has a very powerful case study, and Dan just received, you might have noticed Dan ran into here like he's running through an airport to catch a plane. Dan just received the VMware Innovation Award over in the Marriott, and we all think that's a lot closer than it is. And I know I got caught off guard yesterday. It took me 15 minutes to get over here. So Dan got here on time, but Dan is now a distinguished VMware Innovation Award winner.
The university, not Dan.
Okay, I should state that very, very carefully. Right now, I think of Dan as a very, very prominent figure from Indiana University, especially since Bobby Knight is no longer there. He is my favorite Indiana University person, so I will point that out again. It's Indiana University has received it. Thank you, Dan. A couple of books that are coming out. Actually, the SQL Server book, Virtualizing SQL Server on VMware, is out and orderable. There are copies all over this particular conference. And the Oracle book, which I am a co-author of, and Chris Williams is writing it forward, he's in the front row, will be out before Open World and available. And if it's not, I'll be in big trouble. So, all right. Also, one other announcement before we get going. There is a new VMware Special Interest Group, and it is a VMware Special Interest Group that has been introduced yesterday, actually, as part of the Internet or Independent Oracle User Group, the IOUG. We've noticed a tremendous uptick in adoption rate of Oracle users worldwide, and so that warrants an actual special interest group. We'll see also that we've got a number of different surveys that we have developed between ourselves, VMware, and EMC in regards to Oracle adoption rates through the IAUG, and you'll be seeing some data on that and a report on that from Database Trends publishing company in a few weeks. Okay? So, without further ado, let's talk. Let me go over here. Funny, I'm looking at all of these folks. Where's Dave? Dave Welsh isn't here. This is sort of a House of Brick reunion out here, and on stage here, as all of these customers are, all these panelists are customers of both ourselves, VMware, and House of Brick. And then I also look at the predominance of one part of the country. I've got Omaha to my left and Omaha to my right. I say Omaha, Omaha. All of a sudden, I feel like Peyton Manning.
Yes.
Anybody from Seattle here? I got to go hide.
I don't like the green shirts, by the way.
That's right. The green shirts aren't going to work very well. Okay? All right. So quick questions. I want to go to left to right here to start with. I want to know from all the panelists if there was one particular event, one thing that really stands out in their minds as to what really precipitated their personal and maybe their universities' adoption of virtualization. Dan, go ahead.
Don would like a short answer to this, but I just have to give an opening statement. I like Don a lot. To tell you how much I like Don, I sat in O'Hare Airport after they shut down the runways for some time yesterday just to be here to share this with you. Hello, left side of the audience. You're way over here, and I've got a few more over here in the center side of the audience. So anyway, to answer the question, what precipitated it? What precipitates anything that we do, particularly at the university? We go to the lowest bidder. It's cash, right? So when we were looking at what we needed to do and how we need to improve our infrastructure and our delivery, it came down, in our case, we were motivated by money.
What about you, John?
Same kind of thing. I'd also say that server sprawl back many years ago caused us to look at how can we cut our hardware costs, help our licensing, that sort of thing. The bank has been virtualized now in VMware for about 9 years, and Oracle has been partway through that, and it just made sense for us.
9 years. Ooh, it's back in the bed all days. Wow. What about you, Mike?
Yeah, so for Conagra, of course, licensing plays into it a little bit, but it wasn't really one thing that did it. It was the fact that we had aging hardware, and we wanted to try to abstract the application from the hardware to give us the ability to, decrease downtime, increase maintenance of our servers. It was really, allowed us to stay contemporary.
Chris, how about from Atlanta?
Well, for Atlanta, Don, our story is we've got 3 data centers in Atlanta that all host databases and 2 more in London. And we've been in a multi-year data center consolidation effort. So the time it was taking to build physical servers to migrate onto, just not efficient for our purposes. So we started a virtualization program about 2 years ago. And that's part of why I'm here. It's a success so far.
So this is an applications on Oracle on vSphere panel discussion. So again, I want to quickly go through all the panelists and just give me a list of some of the applications right now that you have that are running on Oracle, running on vSphere. Go ahead, Chris.
Sure. For CETA, most of the applications you may not have heard of. They're our own company's products. We have lost baggage tracking applications that several airlines and airports use. We've got billing systems. We have a gateway that various governments that our company supports use for airline tickets. We do run OEM 12C on a virtualized platform.
So if Dan's going back through O'Hare and he loses that great award, you might be able to find it through your system now?
Well, probably. I say probably
That's a
because
vote of confidence
I'm not going to go query the
airlines.
database, but yes, our system is used.
All right. Mike, what about you? What applications? Just list them, and we'll get into some details in a minute.
Well, yeah, I mean, the quick answer is all of them. But, things like Oracle Transportation Management, PeopleSoft are the well-known names. The biggest one is the suite of SAP applications that we host on VMware.
Right, and that, at this point, it's SAP proper, if you will, not HANA, although that's coming down the track, right?
Yes. So it's SAP, ECC, Supply Chain, Procurement, Transportation Management, Warehouse Management, all reporting.
That's cool stuff. We're going to get into it in more detail here in a minute. How about you, John? You're with a bank, and this is some pretty important, it's all your money, folks, there's some pretty important applications. What do you got running?
Well, other than the mainframe, of course, the bank still relies on the mainframe. We also have other applications like our loss in HR. We're moving our GL to PeopleSoft Financials. And our big implementation over the last few years was the Identity Management Suite from Oracle. Multi-part of that whole suite has been put on both applications and database onto virtual VMware.
Dan, how about you with your extremely large university?
Mike stole my answer. Anything that we do at the enterprise class scale, software-wise, is done inside of VMware. So that includes PeopleSoft, all of our financials. You may, if you're in the higher ed space, you may have heard of the Quality Foundation, the Quality Initiative. So that's a whole suite of applications. We run that. Our learning management system, which happens to be a derivative of Sakai, but you may have heard of Blackboard as another, sort of vendor in that particular space. So anything that we run, that we centrally host, that we deliver to the university across all 8 campuses, runs inside of VMware.
So let's get into this in more detail now. Mike, at Conagra, you're really the world's premier food distribution and food production company overall. So if you folks don't know Conagra out of Omaha, just think of products like Chef Boyardee and many, many others, all the frozen foods you possibly could think of. And
Healthy Choice, Slim Jims.
we can go on for a while with this, I think.
Popcorn.
Well, Mike, tell me more about this SAP implementation and some of the specifics of it. How has virtualized infrastructure really helped you with your availability? And in particular, let's talk about the big one.
So you mentioned the big one. The big one is SAP's ECC database. 4 years ago, when we made the move to push everything to VMware, SAP was the big question mark. This database did not move until this past May, and it's because of the size and the importance of it. So if that database goes down, it's a matter of minutes before it becomes a financial impact.
What happens to them out there?
Well, they don't get popcorn, they don't get Slim Jims, they don't get Healthy Choice. We can't ship product, can't load it, can't send it. So it's a big Oracle database sustaining about 30,000 IOPS, 64K IO, and it's been a success so far.
What about the server footprint? CPUs and memory?
20 CPU, 128 gig of RAM. Our thought is that we keep it simple. So we don't want to cross any NUMA boundaries. Put the PGA footprint into memory, huge pages, all that stuff.
Following our best practices for the most part. And your performance has been?
Good. We didn't necessarily gain a lot of performance, but we didn't lose any. And that's the important piece.
And one of the basic pillars here, that virtualization, vSphere really doesn't change anything. What about you, Chris? How about your application? Tell me more about this lost baggage tracking system. Dan might be really concerned with him. He has to spend some more time in Chicago.
Well, it's just a interface that airlines and airports use to track lost baggage.
That's all.
Yeah, that's all. It went live in January of this year, so it's been performing well. It's a rack on VM, obviously.
Running rack on VM? I thought people said you couldn't do that.
So we're doing it.
What about the airfare pricing system? How does that work?
Just another database, Oracle on VMware.
Just another database, Oracle on VMware. It's becoming commonplace these days, I think.
It changes nothing.
Dan, how about your applications?
Where do you want to start?
Blackboard.
So it's not Blackboard, but that's all right. It's that's another learning management tool. But so just this week, literally while I'm here, yesterday, classes started for all 8 campuses across the university. Roughly 120,000 faculty, students, staff, all trying to figure out where they go, what their syllabus is, what they're supposed to do. And to access the bulk of that information, they use our learning management system. So in our case, it's something, to save you a long story, it comes from a product called Sakai. It's a community source project, and we've worked and built this over the years. Other vendors you may know, as you mentioned, Blackboard, Canvas is very popular right now. So but this system is responsible effectively for students and professors as they use it, Their assignments go there. Their assignments get turned in there. They take quizzes through this tool. They get their grades published and posted through these tools. So this is, in this particular case, this is something that we've written in-house, if you will, or at least that we have a large influence over the development of, and it has gone very well for us. House of Brick, we mentioned earlier, they came in and really basically did a QA of this environment for us when they came in, and I remember them coming back and they were shocked at how succinct the SQL was that ran inside of this application and the volume with which we pushed through inside of a virtualized infrastructure.
Hey, Dan, say something again to me because I'm kind of confused. You have 100,000 students. You're the manager of database services in general, and it's registration week, and you're here getting an award.
Well, you know...
Are you nervous?
Well, honestly... If you would ask this question when I started at the university 8 years ago, yeah, I would say I was really nervous because it was sort of a free-for-all. You know, semester would start, we'd have this group of, technologists assembled so that, we could dial them all up at a moment's notice and say system X, Y, and Z has quit. Well, over the course of and we've been doing virtualization 5.5, 6 years or so, and we have really matured beyond that. It would be how I would put that. In the last 2.5 to 3 years, all of this sort of readiness. I mean, we acknowledge that the start of semester is coming, but given some of the advantages and some of the stability, honestly, that we've gotten from the virtualized platform, we've more or less made the semester start a non-event. Now that can be dangerous though, because you raise that level of expectation. So you have any hiccup at all, they're like, well, how come? You guys never have a problem. But nonetheless. It's something that we are able to do very well.
John, you've got Oracle Identity Management. That's user logins by the many thousands, right? How about you? Tell me more about that. That's incredible.
First National Bank is the largest privately held bank holding company in the U.S., and we build out the environment to handle 1 million logins, and then right now we're in another phase yet to double that to 2 million. The rollout back in, 3 years ago, did not quite go as smoothly as we wanted to. We had everything wrapped up into one database. Oracle will very likely give you a standard edition for free if you're running the IDM Fusion Suite, and that is not the way to go if you've got 1 million logins, by the way. So we fixed that. We were able to add, we added 4 more database instances, so we had 5 running at that time, and that helped us to grow out IDM Suite. All with the same hardware. We did add some capacity. Of course, we had to add some disk space, that sort of thing, but same servers. Again, licensing was already part of the deal. It was really a way to move and grow and expand quicker, faster by having the virtual platform sitting right there for us.
What about other banks? Do you provide any services for any of the banks?
We do. It's not just our customers, but we're also providing services behind the scenes for retailers and their own banking products that you might have out there, store credit card, things like that too.
Let's change direction a little bit. I want to talk about the DBAs. And Mike, how are you able to convince what is normally, many of you out there, I suppose, are DBAs, and you very conservative, very suspect about changing platforms in general. How are you able to convince your DBA staff and crew that going in this direction of virtualized infrastructure is not only viable, but actually provided them innate value?
Yeah, so I don't think it's any secret. Me being an infrastructure guy, it's no secret that infrastructure and DBAs haven't always seen eye to eye. So it was, at first, a lot of skepticism by the DBAs. It really was, we had to prove it to them. So the first time I pulled the DBAs into a room and showed them their database running while a vMotion is going on, they were floored. They just said, this can't be. You didn't move that. It didn't move from system to system. This is crazy.
It's magic.
And really, it's been, over the past 3 years, a building effort. And once they saw how quick it was to provision databases now and how stable it is, they were sold.
Oh, Chris, what about you? You mentioned to me, seeing is believing.
That's right, Don. So in our case, definitely had some skeptical DBAs on my team. And I think what helped us the most was engaging outside expertise that have been there and done it before. So we mentioned House of Brick. Jim Hannon there is one of their folks who spent several months in our shop.
I'm seeing a pattern here.
So yeah, getting someone who's done it and can speak authoritatively definitely helped. And again, seeing is believing. Now that we're probably 18 months into it, we've had a couple of HA events, VMs back up and running, database online in roughly 5 minutes. That was impressive to the team.
What about your developers? What did they say?
There was some nervousness amongst the developers. They didn't really get a vote so much, so this was also a CTO office initiative, so it's just sort of the way it is.
They seem to be happy afterwards. I remember you mentioned to me that they were...
I know the quote you're thinking of. So on the baggage tracking system, I did check in a few months after go live with one of the developer teams there. How's it going? How's your system performing? And the quote was, "We love it." So as a DBA manager, you certainly like hearing feedback like that.
John, you seem to have encountered less resistance over at the bank, why?
Part of it is just the longevity we've had with having VMware virtualization in-house. But also it is, just like you said, it's being able to show that, yes, it's capable. Everything that we do today always goes virtual first. It doesn't go anywhere else but virtual unless there's a demand for it. We have one SQL database that requires 2 terabyte of RAM, and we've made the decision to not virtualize that, of course. But that's about it. Everything else is going virtual right away.
So they've just sort of adopted it in a mindset that they understand it, it makes sense to them, and the resistance has faded.
Yeah, it's just, for a DBA, and Mike, I can understand, for a DBA, all I want is CPU, memory, and disk. Just give me more and more and more. That's all it takes.
So Dan, I saved you for last in this. Tell me about the Happy DBA.
The Happy DBA. So, as we've alluded to, perhaps not so veiled, that database administrators can be hard to get along with from time to time. And I don't know the makeup of the audience. Any DBAs in the room? Raise your hand. Well, I see a few. Yeah, you probably know what I'm talking about, right? Because it's our job to fix things and nobody else will, isn't it? If the application people blame the database, the infrastructure people blame the database, we try to blame the network people, but they've gotten better at refuting that. They have tools to tell them that it's not the network, so they still blame the database. Right? So that being said, we're responsible for the company's most important data. We're responsible for keeping the systems online. Well, yeah, we can only do patches in the middle of the night when everybody else is sleeping, So if you'd like, I could go on. Why in the world wouldn't we be upset? So anyway, at IU, when I arrived, we were a mess in many different respects with regards to the database team. But one of the challenges there is we had silos of DBAs. This person ran the financials, this person ran the HR system, this person ran the data warehouse. This Oracle was installed various ways across the ecosystem. We've come a long way since then, and we've really worked to make the Happy DBA. And we've accomplished that through standardization, standardization, consolidation, virtualization, and just really an effort of reinventing our whole ecosystem. So while money was a driving factor, right? While the executive said, we virtualized our web servers, we virtualized the app servers, database people, what's wrong with you, right? So while that was the motivating factor to get us on board, what virtualization really presented us was the opportunity to reinvent our whole ecosystem. And in doing that, and adhering to these tenets and through automation, really these 4 things that we accomplished, we've greatly increased job satisfaction amongst database administrators, reduced the number of hours. I'll just take a case in point. It just happened here most recently. When we started this process, we had about 70 database servers. We've since grown, databases. We've since grown to about 270 databases through natural growth, through new applications coming on, by offering development, as we talked about, the ability to have a full suite of regression environment, test environment, as opposed to saying, sorry, we don't have resources for that when we were in the legacy environment. So during that time, we've also reduced our Oracle staff by 2 DBAs through natural attrition. I didn't fire anybody who've gone on to do other things. We've not replaced those spots. So with that setup, we applied the most recent Oracle PSU. So that would have been the July PSU. We applied that in our standard maintenance window in August. So so within a period of about 3 weeks, using really 1 DBA through our automation and our process and configuration, all those sorts of things, effectively, that's the first time at IU that we have been able to have that quick of a response to a PSU spread across all of our enterprise. The point I want to make with that, really as it pertains to VMware, is certainly if you don't use VMware, you can have standards. You could do automation. But it has really enabled us to reinvent ourselves as DBAs, and I feel like really give new definition to the jobs we do and help us to focus on the important things around running the infrastructure and probably less time on sort of some of the administrivia or problems across with configuration, those sorts of things.
So you probably can tell Dan can talk about the Happy DBA for a while, and that's because he gives separate presentations and separate sessions on the Happy DBA. In fact, he's blogged about that. In fact, he should actually have a copyrighted, he should actually trademark the Happy DBA. So let's change a little bit up again. I want to know about the policy towards virtualization and new implementations in general. So, Mike, what about you? What is the policy at this point at Conagra in terms of new implementations or anything else that's migrating?
Well, anything new coming in is virtualized. It's virtualized until they prove that it can't be. And really, anything tier 2 and below, tier 2, 3, and 4, we will virtualize it even if the application says it can't. So it will go.
The application owners or the application vendor?
The
or
vendor,
both?
the vendor, both. It will go virtual and until they prove that it can't be.
What about you, Chris?
We're a virtualized first policy.
John, you talked about a particular application for technical reasons, the large amount of memory that you couldn't put in virtualized infrastructure yet, by the way.
Right.
We'll put that caveat on it. But what about your general principles there at the bank?
Very much virtualized first. There's no reason not to. They have to have the application owner or the application software vendor has to have a very good reason why it can't be. I guess one other example I remember is there's a physical dongle that was required on a box.
What about in the home and the Hoosiers there, Dan?
So it's a common thread, virtualize first. We really went to vendors and said, you will virtualize or we will find another vendor once we achieved, when we were doing the actual rollout, if you will. So we put a lot of pressure back to our vendor partners, basically to prove to us that their systems wouldn't work. And if they wouldn't work, then we had some serious discussion with them. And so it's really just the piece that we are doing now is we are really extending our private cloud. We are virtualizing other university services as well as our department services. So we're pulling in department, sort of fringe IT departments across the university, getting servers out of closets, and really now pulling them into the central core as well.
Dan, what about other aspects of the university, the individual departments, particularly the scientific departments, where I've always thought they looked at computing in general as a necessary inconvenience? Are they starting to adopt some of this as well?
They are, and this is part of it is in response to effectively a policy the university has put in place surrounding security. So as I just had mentioned, essentially the university established a policy that basically provides accountability for servers that a department run. Universities can be a little unique in that as department heads or deans, they can tend to wield a lot of influence. Even though there's a president of the university, a dean can wield a lot of influence, particularly if there's a lot of funding behind the work that they do. And so it's not uncommon for there to, say, be shadow IT systems, or we don't like what central IT provides, so we're going to go build our own, those sorts of things. So the policy that was put into place effectively is making those deans accountable for the security and the underlying, I guess, data protection of these systems. And as such, we're getting a whole lot of interest now from the departments and deans basically looking to come into central IT. So this would include our research units as well, where they look at some of their systems that the business of research is a little bit different. It is, but with regards to the business of research is a little bit different with respect to the fact that
Well, they're picking up and they're buying their own systems separately, and so they have a lot more individual control over the systems that they buy with their own grants and such.
That's right.
But you've got a policy right now that at least has them require the consideration of virtualized infrastructure first, even though, especially I would think in the scientific environments, the physics environments, the chemistry that do a lot of HPC, which this is really the bleeding edge, I think, right?
It is, it is. And so what we're seeing is from the research side, the systems that they treat as operational, so maybe not your high-performance computers that got to crunch numbers from the stars, but things that maybe are about doing the business of research, they really are looking to come towards us in a much more standard fashion, fitting right into the farm with any other real business app. So a lot of this is partly about streamlining, the way that we as universities do business.
So one of the questions that always comes up, one of the concerns that legitimately comes up is how you support all of this. I mean, you've got your applications being supported, you've got Oracle being supported, you're doing that internally, you're doing that through Oracle, you're doing that through VMware, so you've got a lot of different components to this. So let's just start with John. How about you? How is the support arrangements work, and how effective has it been?
Really, it's no different than any other application database. If you've got an Oracle issue, you attack it from an Oracle issue side of it house. We're lucky at the bank to have two and a half DBAs that are probably got 40 to 50 years of experience between us for Oracle itself. So the problems that could come up are going to be Oracle specific, nothing to do with the behind the scenes hardware or virtualization, that sort of thing. You can look at the stack and see, again, more application side of it too, where you've got really good people in-house who are working with the application. They know what it's supposed to be doing. The support in itself, just talking to each other, it just goes like anything else you have in a support organization out there. It's nothing about the behind the scenes. It's whether or not that software is talking to the database properly and the database is performing the way it should. We all know how to diagnose and treat those kind of symptoms to find the proper problem. It's never underneath the covers.
Chris, relatively speaking on this panel, you're a little bit new to this. How was your initial implementation support working?
So far, so good. We have had some various problems during development cycles. We log an SR with Oracle, and it gets responded to. Haven't really had any issues. I can think of one case where DBA on my team got a little bit of pushback from Oracle when the topic of VMware came up, and then I updated the SR, requested escalation to the duty manager, and then the SR started moving again. So other than that, no, I've had no problems.
So what about you, Mike? And in particular, I know, because I've been involved with Conagra quite a bit, you've had occasion to actually use the Oracle team at Global Support Services inside VMware.
Yeah, so the one thing that probably needs to be called out is, as far as support goes in Conagra, nothing has changed. There's a misnomer out there, or I think it's getting better, but you touched on it here, that Oracle will not support you if you're on VMware. We had a lot of luck with people like you, Don, that helped sell the Oracle on VMware concept to our upper management, which in turn allowed us to move forward with it and support it as if VMware is not even there. So one of the things that we did do is we engaged VMware Oracle support when we were moving our big ECC database to VMware, just to make sure that we were using all the avenues that we could to verify that this system was going to work as we expected it to. And everything worked great. It was a great engagement that we had with VMware, and here we are today.
Dan, you're the real veteran up here. How's support go for you all the way through both your organization with VMware, with Oracle?
It's really going very well. To be clear and to be fair, we actually do have a contract with VMware for BCS, so I believe that's business critical support.
It is. Right?
So we have been happy both on the Oracle front as well as certainly on the VMware front. We found that to be just a very good working relationship, and we have not had, we don't go and just immediately tell Oracle when we open an SR that we run on VMware. given the amount of money that we pay to them on a license perspective, I have an expectation they're at least going to, talk about the problem with me before we, come up to the discussion of VMware as an issue. So, but we've not had any. That being said, we've never. I mentioned here that Chris has had some pushback because we've never actually had any pushback with that in that particular space.
So, and just to clarify for everyone out there, Dan has business critical support, but you don't need business critical support or mission critical support. You just need the regular production level support to have access to the Oracle support team at VMware Global Support Services.
Right.
Okay? And I've said for a very long time that the two greatest assets that we have in regards to this overall proposition is the capabilities of vSphere and the Oracle team at Global Support Services. And the guy who put that team together, Mike Mathis, is sitting up in the front row here, so you can talk to him later. Mm-hmm. So let's move on just a little bit. I want to get more into some of the specifics of some of the applications. Mike, what's on your roadmap, and what are some new applications that you're going to be putting in virtualized infrastructure? And also, if you can, talk a little bit about some advanced features that you might be using.
So some of the new ones that are coming down the pipe are SAS. It's an analytical tool that we're going to stand up shortly. We're in the process of doing that now. JDA warehouse management that is going to allow us to move a legacy warehouse management system to vSphere. Some of the tools that we use are, pretty much all the basic ones. HA, vMotion, snapshotting, DRS, storage DRS. We are heavy into using vCenter operations. We use that tool really as a lifeline into our systems. If that goes down, it's pretty big for us.
All right, Chris, what about you? How's your overall implementation going, and what features are you using now, and what's next after the baggage tracking and the pricing comparison application?
Sure. So far, so good. We're about halfway through, or a little bit beyond halfway through our migration. So coming up next, we've got some e-commerce booking type applications. And I'm not sure if it was on my intro slide, but our company provides solutions for the air transport industry. So we've got over 200 airlines worldwide who are customers and use these products. So we're coming along, and things are going well so far.
For those of us who travel a lot, anything we should be nervous about?
Not with respect to the applications we're hosting.
I'm never nervous when I'm traveling at all, especially leaving Newark Friday night. So, Dan, give me some other applications that you're using, and just some more details about them, I think the PeopleSoft application and so on.
Sure. So in general, the PeopleSoft application is a 8 vCPU server, runs about 64 gig of RAM, and I should put a little asterisk there beside that. Really, the only reason we have that much RAM for that particular server is there's one table that the customer is really particular about, and so we pin that in memory, and that thing's about, I think, 22 gig. So that has to do with their batch performance and some of those types of characteristics that we see with that workload. So in general, we tend to run all of our systems. We allocate resources as needed. So we try to right size and not oversize within a virtual environment. Our data warehouse today is really only 12 vCPU. And it has an SGI, I believe, of about 96 gigs. So not massive. When it comes to those particular aspects. But one thing that we found moving from the legacy systems into the virtual space is how VMware manages the CPU algorithms and how they schedule the CPU gave us a much smoother use curve of CPU, and really, from our perspective, improved the world of how CPU is used inside a physical piece of hardware. In the olden days, we could look at our graph and we'd have all sorts of spikes all over the place. You know, you could see when the peak was and when it wasn't and those sorts of things. But it's a much smoother use curve as as VMware shares that processor amongst the various VMs on that machine, and we feel like we get better response from that angle.
What about the university financials? I think you're doing that too.
Yeah, so we're doing the university financials. One of the things that I mentioned earlier, we like community source. And there's a large community source initiative called the Quali Foundation. The Quali Foundation is a suite of apps which includes university financials, time tracking, research grant administration. It seems mobile device, mobile apps. Just workflow. So workflow as you want to move, say, work or tasks through the system. So it's really an ecosystem that is being developed in conjunction with the Carnegie Foundation and other universities across really the world. And the end goal of this is ultimately, I would describe it as to come up with a central set of common community developed systems that can be leveraged across universities, and then to help us do away with some of the vendors some of the challenges that we have in the existing space. So that's, all our bread and butter runs. My paycheck comes out of, VMware.
So thinking of advanced architectures, it's one of the beautiful aspects, I think, of the overall architectures is the idea of the Software Defined Datacenter and its extensions into storage and networking. And then I think of Oracle RAC potentially running on the Software Defined Datacenter. That's just pretty cool for anybody who's been into real IT architectures for a long time, as many of us have. So, but I'll tell you that what we've seen with so many of our customers is that often the case is that RAC is just an overkill, and they don't really need the level of extreme high availability and other capabilities that RAC has. So I want to ask our panelists here about their use of RAC and their use or their lack of use of RAC and their determination around that. So Mike, start please.
Yeah, so this could be a winded response, but for the most part, one of the things that we tried to do as far as putting Oracle databases on VMware was to keep it simple. One of the things that we gained by doing that is the ability to stay contemporary, keep firmware up to date, keep OSs up to date. Now with a VM reboot of 3 minutes, it no longer is a concerning thing for the app owner that we go do an OS upgrade. The biggest thing wasn't the change, it was the fact that we had to take a 15-minute outage, and that just didn't happen. So as far as RAC goes, we have determined that the simplicity of our environment is more important than adding the complexity of RAC. We do have RAC, and we do have some RAC on VMware. We really put it on VMware just to show that we could. But we have acquired a company that their JDE system runs on RAC, and what we found out is it's highly complex, and we don't think that
expensive to implement, expensive to maintain, expensive to acquire.
Yeah, so we have not seen a reason to introduce that complexity into our environment at this point.
And don't get us wrong, RAC is the most sophisticated, powerful database management technology in human history, and it's wonderful, but in this particular case, we're kind of alluding to that often you just don't need it, and if you're going to use it, if you're going to implement it, you better have really good reasons. So, Mike, also, one of the claims that I make is that using vMotion properly and having a cluster built out properly and having understanding of how maintenance mode works, effectively you can eliminate downtime for hardware maintenance. Am I blowing smoke there, you think?
No, that was one of the biggest wins by us moving to VMware, and with the use of Cisco UCS as well, is we had a problem before that we would hit firmware bugs and we'd take unplanned outages due to the fact that we could not keep up with our code. And anytime we'd call a hardware vendor, it would be, yeah, we can't help you till you update your code. So what this has allowed us to do is we can go and update the infrastructure of 450 physical servers in the matter of a week with zero downtime.
What about you, John, with rack?
Well, we were looking at going with 5 nines of uptime, so we decided that we needed to have rack, mainly for that PSU patch you got to throw in every quarter. But also, you talk about the complexity. You know, we try to keep it simple too, except that when the application layer is so complex, when it talks to each other, and if it can't get to the database, the entire stack goes down. And then that's an outage of a good 20 minutes just to reboot the stack. And that's something we'll get better at, and that's something that the software vendor will get better at. But until that time, we just can't be down. So that's one of the major reasons why we went to rack. It's not so much for performance as it is just to make sure that we have the uptime we need.
And it is virtualized.
It is all virtualized. And we had problems getting it rolling internally. I shouldn't say problems. I should just say it's a lack of knowledge. You know, it is one of those, rack is one of those things that all DBAs want to be able to say they can do, so they can put on a resume because it looks good in a job interview someday. But for us, it was something new for us, but not a whole lot of time to get trained up on it. And we were able to use VMware, our contract with VMware, to bring in House of Brick as a sub, just to bring in that expertise. And it really helped us with our time frame of getting it rolled out pretty fast. Rack is a new beast in itself, and with rolling out with many different physical hardware, with the VMware on top of it all, just to help make that rollout easier was great. But having the expertise walk in the door with little headache for us was quite a bonus.
Dan, you have any rack? I forget.
No, too cheap.
What about you, Chris?
We do. We've got a good mixture of rack and singles. It just depends on the application and what SLAs we have with our customers. So we do leverage rack in situations where we want to do the rolling patches to keep the application.
Virtualizing that yet? I forget.
Pardon me?
You virtualizing your rack infrastructure yet?
Absolutely.
How about that? How has that helped with your overall availability? I mean, the combination of using rack when you need to and vSphere HA.
It's been good. I don't have the metrics on it, but it's been good. We have had some situations where we needed to perform hardware maintenance, and we just vMotion everything off of that blade, conduct the maintenance. It works like a charm.
John, where are you going with all of this? What's next? You mentioned PeopleSoft, right?
Yeah, that's been our next major step, I would say, is taking the GL, many different products. Some of it's on the mainframe, but combining it into PeopleSoft Financials, again, an Oracle product. And that's a 1-year rollout, which is, if you understand financials, a lot of people here have done that. That's pretty aggressive to do a financials rollout. But to be able to do this with VMware, with the app layer and the database layer, rolling out all those VMs, when it comes to how PeopleSoft wants to do things, you got many different environments, more than just your dev queue and prod. And of course, I've even talked about our DR strategy that's down in Lenexa, Kansas.
Please do.
Yeah, and that's yet another environment. Yeah, we leverage VMware down there for our data guard for Oracle. This year, it's amazing to see how fast, this is already, August, almost September, and to see how fast we've come with just getting PeopleSoft Financials in place by January next year.
What about overall performance for you?
It's great.
That's what I want to hear. Dan, let me ask you this. If you had to just sum it up in a couple of sentences, which may be difficult for you, but if you had to sum it up in a couple of sentences, why is Oracle on vSphere so important to you as really a high-level IT manager at this point?
Because it helps us make the happy DBA. I mean, honestly, if I'm concerned about my staff, their lives, and the quality of their lives, I want all the tools I can have at my disposal to help make their lives easier as they provide service to the university. And that really is something that we couldn't do previously, that VMware has helped us to, like as I mentioned earlier, reinvent that ecosystem and really start new from the ground up.
So just in summarizing, you too, John, why as an IT manager at this point, very involved in database services, why is running Oracle on vSphere so effective and so important to you right now?
For me, it's one of those things where I just want CPU, memory, and disk. And all I need to do is to go out and say, look, I can talk to my capacity team and say, look, we have this special application coming up. We want to be able to virtualize this. And this is how much space we're going to need. This is how much we're going to need a DR situation for it. We need a D&Q, and we can roll that out so fast. Lifecycle management's there. We can do snapshots as we're rolling in packages and changes to application, database changes, things like that. It just makes for a smooth transition.
So, Mike, what about you? Do you have any kind of different perspective on that and why it's so important to you as an IT manager? And I know you're moving in some other directions, too. I don't think we talked at all about potential for HANA as well. But most importantly, why is it, in general, so effective for you?
Well, for us, I touched on it before. It really helped out a fragmented relationship between infrastructure and database. We're able to now, with the use of templates and the speed of provisioning, we can spit out a database. It's a database in a box type of concept, like spit out a database with ASM on it and grid running on it, and the minute that it turns on, it's ready for a DBA to configure the database. In the past, that would have taken weeks to do. So it's helped us in the sense of speed things up. We're able to standardize better. So every Oracle database VM that we have, we can say is within a degree of standard. So it's helped quite a bit in that way.
Chris, and I keep emphasizing this, but you're relatively new to this overall paradigm as compared to the rest of the panel. Although you've been to a lot of conferences and you've listened a lot to a lot of us lecture about this. But why, given that you're somewhat new in terms of SITA, why is it so important to you?
Well, some of the same reasons we just talked about. For us, we have automated our single database build, so we can roll a new database VM off the assembly line, so to speak, in about 15 minutes. So given the sheer number of databases that we had to build over the last several months, that was a big win for us because it definitely took weeks before. HA we talked about, I've seen benefits from that. vMotion, no question there. It's
make your life easier?
In some ways, yes, but there are other challenges involved. But
are you happy?
Yes.
You're happy, DBA? Dan will be happy. All right, so we got 5 minutes to go, and I want to throw out some rapid-fire questions here. And the first of which is, I really want to know from these folks, we've got a lot of incredible announcements here, a lot of name changes, a lot of different directions that we're going in at VMworld, and we've announced them already. And I would like to know from everyone on the panel, what is it that they're most looking forward to here in terms of something that's been released or something that they haven't implemented yet in terms of a feature? So Dan, go ahead and start.
So the first part was what am I looking forward to? SMPFT. I was happy to see that come out there today, or at least the announcement that it might be there for 4 CPU. We've been waiting on that a while, and that's my, might be too cheap for rack, but what a bit I can figure out how to fund SMTFP. So once that fits into the model. And the second part was?
I'll get to the second part.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
John, what about you?
About the same thing. I went to a presentation on Monday for eCalm, which I kind of look forward to diving more into that. But
so what about the new Software Defined Datacenter paradigm here, Mike? What is new out there that you're really looking forward to implementing?
Well, Dan touched on it. The multi-CPU fault tolerance is really, we want to introduce that into our SAP environment to continue to increase uptime for any maintenance.
Getting a pattern here again. What about you, Chris?
Well, I've talked to you before about more than one vCPU on fault tolerance. But I did attend a session earlier this week, so I've got a little bit of interest in Log Insight. Can that ingest my Oracle logs and maybe help correlate events when those happen? And I also want to learn a little bit more about the distance multi-data center vMotion that we heard about in the keynote this morning.
There you go. That's cool. There'll be a session later this afternoon on the vSphere Metro storage cluster and the various different physical configurations that apply to that storage paradigm. You might want to attend that. So I got one more question for the whole panel, and we'll wrap it up here. What do you want to see? What are we not doing that you all need and want to see as an intrinsic aspect of the way vSphere works? Go ahead, Chris.
Boy, that's a tough one. Maybe I'll just say I don't know what I don't know. You've mentioned I'm somewhat new compared to the other panelists. So far, I've liked what we've gotten so far, and I'm still trying to get that rolled out.
Okay, Mike, what about you?
Well, you touched on it earlier. With SAP HANA and other in-memory database technologies, we're really looking to see, up in the limits of memory for VMs and starting to put all of that into VMware.
I want to see a 2 terabyte VM, huh?
Absolutely.
Cool. Maybe 4? All right, I'm pushing it. Go ahead, John.
That's what I want is a 2 terabyte VM. I could use it today. So, but going forward, and we've talked about this before, Don and I have, but just making sure the fault tolerance is there for my Oracle database with ASM. Going forward, making sure that as a DBA, you always want storage. I can have provision storage in ASM without any downtime. A lot of things you can probably do already, but let's make it easier.
Dan, want to wrap us up here?
Sure. I got 2, if you can believe it. The first one is, and this came from my peer manager of the virtualization team at the university, he'd really like to be able to extend his vSphere cloud to, say, EC2. He'd like to, be able to run vSphere on EC2 infrastructure from a DR perspective. I thought that was interesting. Some of you might think it's nuts. But anyway, that was his. Mine, I don't know how many of you run the vSphere repository or go through the upgrade process of that as new releases come out. This is a gripe. So this is something I'd like to see, I think cleaned up there in that vSphere side.
Whoops, do I need to be scared?
Yeah, well, you read the documentation, and it seems that they assume that everybody installs the repository in SQL Server. Because if it's a 4-page document, there are 3.5 pages dedicated to SQL, how you run it in SQL Server, and a paragraph about how you run it in Oracle. So from our perspective, we had some challenges when it comes to upgrading vSphere itself, and I would love to see, me not walking away from those sorts of tickets and situations when I talk with my virtualization team, going, where's VMware on this particular piece of the puzzle?
So folks, Chris Cook from SITA, Mike Peters from Conagra, John Tucker from First National Bank of Nebraska, and Dan Young, who is not nervous about registration at Indiana University. So thank you. This is your Applications on Oracle on vSphere panel for this year. Thank you.